the traffic was bumper to bumper. There was a zebra actually loose on the highway. The power went out and my alarm didn't go off. The weather was so bad, my car wouldn't even start this morning. I forgot something at home that I needed for work and I had to go back. We've all heard the excuses before. We may have been even the one giving them. But is being late really hurting you or your business?
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Hey, Foxy listener, thank you so much for joining me today. So this episode kind of came to be because honestly, I'm late with this episode. And when I was trying to decide what I wanted to talk about, I realized I should be talking about the fact of lateness. So first off, let's define what I actually mean by being late. You need to first understand that being late might depend greatly on the type of culture you're in. And I know that we have listeners all around the world. So for example, in South American countries, you might be considered on time if you show up within 2 hours of an appointment. Where my mom used to live in Puerto Rico, if the tide came in, you might not show up because the surf was in or you needed a siesta, and that's normal and okay. However, in places like Switzerland, even showing up at exactly the scheduled time might be considered late since everyone is expected to show up early. But for the purposes of this episode, I'm going to stick to the norm for most of North American business culture, which is typically about a 5-minute window for showing up to a scheduled appointment. And it is considered that if you're running later than that, there's kind of an expectation that you would call, explain where you are, and what time you're expecting to show up. This does a few things. It lets the other party know that you haven't forgotten the meeting, as well as it doesn't leave them to make up their own stories about why you're late. Because we all know that the longer you leave people to imagine things, the closer you're going to get to them saying things like, they damn well better be dead in a ditch somewhere. But we need to also look at the other side of it too. Now, my husband is a person that is always late, and he doesn't do it on purpose, and I've given up trying to figure it out. Actually, our entire family jokes that we always will tell him an hour before anything is supposed to start, because then he'll show up when we actually want him to. We actually have a saying, it's called Fox time. So people always ask, is he showing up on Fox time or real time? It actually bothers him quite a bit, but we still find it funny. But there is something to how other people think about being early. Now, I'm not talking about being on time. I'm talking about showing up to something early. Some people feel that it's inefficient because it requires to sit around with nothing to do, because typically the waiting time is just short enough that you can't really get into another project, because as soon as you really start getting into it, it would be time to stop. Some say that they feel awkward or uncomfortable waiting. They might even feel as if others are watching or judging them, thinking, well, they must not have a life if they can show up early. And this may be true or may not be. And there is truth that there is a cost associated with getting somewhere early. Just as someone else's time is valuable and you want to respect it by being punctual, your time is valuable, and some would rather use it productively than wait around inefficiently. As I was going through some stuff in my desk, I actually came across an old article in USA Today, and it was actually writing about tardiness for CEOs, and they used a hypothetical example. So they used a CEO of Citigroup, and he arrives 15 minutes late to a meeting with his 4 best paid lieutenants. So it actually cost the company $4,250. That's the price of the 4 employees' time for waiting 15 minutes for the big guy to show up. Now, these numbers were in 2002, so just think what a similar late arrival could potentially cost today. Yet the same argument can be applied to the cost of being early. So if those 4 well-paid employees arrived 15 minutes before the main guy showed up, it would still cost the company the same amount, but in wasted time. So there is something to be said about whether showing up super early or on time, which one is better. I myself used to be early for everything, and I mean everything. If I wasn't at least 15 minutes early, I felt like I was late. And I remember from a young age, my mom used to always tell me, if you start work at 9 a.m., that means that you are in, dressed, and on the floor, ready to work at 9, not just walking through the door at 9. And it always stuck with me. Once I had my son, being that early didn't always work. I started having to rely on babysitters showing up on time, feeding time coordination, and sometimes just pulling myself away from them. Now, other times, I will be honest, I had my jacket and boots on and was literally running down the driveway before the babysitter even had a chance to fully get in the door because I was ready to get out. And although I felt that being early was showing others that I respected their time, thinking back, it also did me a bit of a disservice when someone was late. So if I was 15 minutes early for my appointment, but the person I was meeting was 15 minutes late from when we were supposed to meet, to me, it would actually feel like they were 30 minutes late. And it really reflected on how I treated that person once they arrived, because I felt like I had been waiting a really long time for them, when in reality, they really only were the 15 minutes late. Now, I still try to show up for my 10 minutes early because it allows me to pick the seat that I want, to get organized for the meeting and be ready to go. It also gives me time to sit and get my head fully into that space of whatever meeting or activity I'm going into. I can really just take time to breathe and really be present for what it is that I'm about to do and not have all of these other things going through my mind. I find now I pick my wait time activities better. So, for example, when I get my son from school, I always arrive 10 minutes before the bell. And he usually comes out anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes after the bell. But now I make a point of taking that time to get in some of the reading that I want to do. I absolutely love reading, but I always find the excuse that I just don't have enough time. I'm too busy in my day. But by purposely leaving a book in the car while I'm waiting, I take that time to do another task that I can get done that still makes me feel productive, like reading a book that I've always wanted to get through. Now, if I'm going somewhere new, that early 10 minutes just helps me not to feel so flustered. So if I'm trying to navigate a new building or I'm trying to find the room that I need to be at, being early allows me that I know I have that leeway time so I can enter the meeting looking relaxed instead of looking like I just ran a marathon, panting away, because not only was I late arriving, but then I had to take extra time to figure out where I needed to be. So we're all going to be late at some point in our life. But what I want this episode to do for you is really take time to pay attention to how often you say, "I'm so sorry I'm late." Has it started to become a regular thing that you say when you're walking into a meeting? Are you taking the time to look around and see other people's faces and realize what it means to them for you being late? Now, there are tons of ways that you can get yourself better at arriving on time. I mean, just Google how to stop being late. I'm not going to give you a bunch of tips in this episode because honestly, it's so different for every single person. You have to find out the root of why you're always being late. And if you think being late is no big deal, because there are a lot of people who go, so I was late, big deal. Like, what are you so upset about? I want you to really take a look. Or if you are a person that was doing a lot of eye rolling listening to this episode, put yourself in the position of the last time you were, let's say, at the doctor's office, and you arrive at 10 a.m. for your appointment. You check in and sit down, but time ticks by and you keep checking your watch, and all of a sudden it's 10:45. Now, remember that running tally that you kept of all those people that came in after you? And start having the internal conversation of, why are they going in? They got here after me. They don't even seem that sick. What the hell? Oh my God, I was supposed to be in at 10 o'clock. It's 10:45. My time is valuable. See, being late once in a while happens, but being late all the time is just rude. It makes other people upset. It makes them feel not valued. And it really is a habit that you need to change if that's something that you're doing all the time. If you're in a retail store, being on time is so crucial for your customers. When I owned my store, there was lots of times that people would be there right when I opened because they needed to run in and grab something super quick, something that they forgot, something they needed for their kids' project at school, but they really just needed to be in and out. And opening your doors late can cause loss of sales and can even lose you customers for good if it's something that you're constantly doing. And if it is something that you're constantly doing, change your hours. If you say you're always going to be at work at 10, but you constantly show up and only open your doors at 10:30, change your hours to 10:30. It just makes sense. But being too early into the shop can cause issues too. I remember one time when I had my store, I was getting an early morning shipment. So I was in about 2 hours before I actually opened. Now, I had the doors unlocked, but all of my lights were left off. And I let the delivery person know, I'm here, so please try the doors. Don't just drive by and think, well, she looks closed and continue on. Because it was a shipment I was waiting for a special event that we were doing the very next day. So it was very important that I got that. But I was really surprised about how many times people came into the store not paying any attention to the fact that no lights were on, that all of my signs said closed, and even the giant lit up one that I had in the window wasn't lit up. Now, you would think when they came through the door and saw that the store was really, really dark, that they would be like, oh, wait a second, and maybe look at the hours on the door, or that something would register a bell with them going, oh, maybe they're not actually open yet. But it was surprising how many times I would come from the back after hearing the door chime and would see people shopping around. And I would be like, hi, can I help you? And they would be like, yeah, you really need to get better lighting in here. It's so hard to shop when it's so dark. And I would stand there kind of bewildered going, well, it's dark because we're not open yet. And they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. How was I supposed to know? And of course you can't, in my head, I'm like, well, there's no lights on and the doors, all the signs say closed. Like, and it's kind of dark in here. Like, I don't know what other hints to give you. But it was funny because these days people aren't paying attention to the signs. They just try the door and if it's unlocked, in they go. And our minds are on so many different things. So it would take a while for me to get my computer up and running and get everything that I needed going because really I had about an hour and a half before I was going to actually start doing any of that stuff. So it caused me a lot of stress too because it was taking time away from what I needed to do before I got the store open. So it was a little bit of a disservice to be there early. But in the end, I did make some sales, but I learned my lesson that when I was going in early, the first thing I did was turn on my computer so that if somebody did come in, I could flick on the lights and I would be able to close that sale without having them to make them wait. Now, my husband would always be like, you should have just told them to come back when you open. So there really was that difference of opinion. To me, I was like, well, I was there and, they were apologetic that they came early, but, a sale is a sale at the end of the day. So you really do have to figure out what works for you and what works good for your soul. And again, I know no one is ever going to complain if you close late, but we all just need to get over that. I would love for you guys to head over to my Facebook and Instagram pages and let me know under this episode's post. Are you an early arrival person? And how early do you like to arrive? Or are you a late person? And how late do you constantly arrive for your meetings? And if you're willing, what's one of the main reasons you can think of that you find makes you late? If you have a funny story about either being early or being late, then I for sure want to hear about it. Because as I always say, I'm all about having fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?